Hi everyone, my name's Daisy and welcome to Daisy's Digital Diary. So in today's video we're going to be going over my A-level art sketchbooks. I took AQA Art and Design in the years 2018 to 2020, so I didn't quite finish off my project properly, and you'll see that in the sketchbooks. There's 4 of them, and in the last one, like, the work isn't as good as I'd hoped it to be, so I might do more work on it in the future, but I might not. So this is where I'm at present in 2021 with my whole Dreamlab sequence. So in my art A-level I did 4 sketchbooks. I did one that was summer work, which I did in the year between GCSE and A-level, which was just meant to be like a starting point for my whole A-level. A lot of people chose to change their topic from their summer work to their coursework, but I decided to stick with the same topic. This topic for me was the Dreamlab. This idea originally comes from a video documentary art series by NCT called NCT Mentary, where they talk about the idea of the Dreamlab. And in this Dreamlab anything is possible, and throughout the series of 4 books I explore dreams through my Dreamlab with my 2 main characters. So we got the antagonist of the experimenter, who wears this lovely suit, and then we got our protagonist of Subject Alpha. So both are played by me, which can get confusing at times. However, usually when it is the experimenter they're going to be wearing this suit here, and when it's the subject she isn't, she's wearing other clothing. And also in my book it is labelled, so when I'm telling the story it does kind of make sense. And both are played by me because it's meant to be an exploration of self-identity. I don't know if I managed to fully fulfil that brief, but I think it was definitely fun to go along the way and kind of come up with this really interesting storyline, in my point of view, about kind of identity and the pursuit of it. So in my art and design A-level, there was lots of people around me doing drawing, painting, collaging, sculpting, textiles, things like this. But my thing was photography, and I often found it was really difficult to kind of pick up marks with photography, and I didn't really know what I was doing most of the time. So my concept of the Dreamlab really helped me to pick up marks, I believe, because it gave a real purpose to my work. And you know, in A-level art and design you are meant to be kind of exploring an idea and moving forward with it. But when you've got the same medium of photography every time, for me I had to use the concept to pick up those marks, because unlike drawing or painting I can't really change the style of my photography that much. So mainly I went through and the progression was within the concept. So without further ado, let's get into the sketchbook tour. This was done in between my GCSEs and A-levels, so it's not particularly developed and it's definitely not my best work, but it's a good starting point. So let's get started. So a number of titles to choose from, and I chose transformations. To start off with, I did a quick mind map of ideas that I wanted to do. I obviously made it look nice for the aesthetic of the book, but you know, I think a mind map is always a great idea just to kind of get some ideas down, start jotting down some potential explorations you could do. So like in GCSE, I think it's really important to start off with an artist study or some sort of inspiration that you can really draw off, because it's really difficult going straight into a new project without any sort of inspiration. So here I've just got some artist images. This is the NCT's video series called NCT Mentary, and it actually inspired the rest of my project. So here's some images from that. And then I just went on and did some photographic responses. These are just photographs I took over summer. They're not crazy amazing photographs, but they're a good way into experimenting with different ideas with this kind of aesthetic. Then I've got this little door into the Dreamlab. This is just trying out different, like, you know, collaging, painting techniques. I'm not very good at painting or anything, so, you know, this is just what we're working with. And then here I took some photographs in a field of some old technology, which is a reoccurring theme throughout the rest of my book. So the idea is this is kind of just introducing the theme of the Dreamlab and the different retro technology I would use within the rest of my project. Subject 1. Here is photographs taken in the same field, just kind of that idea of the subject is entering the lab. This lab is only for my summer work, so after this project, this lab is located somewhere else. REM on, and then we enter the dream. These are actually things from a tape, so just kind of bringing in some different textures and kind of trying to be creative. The impossible becomes possible. So here we've just done some floating pictures. So she was on a step ladder and then we just photoshopped that out afterwards. It's a really simple technique and it always looks really good in my opinion. And then did some more artist responses. So that's that book done. It's not exactly the best work, but you know, that was done in 6 weeks over the summer holidays after GCSEs. So you know, that was a good starting place for me. This is my first sketchbook. This is called Inside the Dream Lab and it's the first kind of exploration into this 2-year-long project of the Dream Lab. So starting on this page, dreams and reality, so all the way through this kind of newspaper represents reality and this marbling technique using oil and water represents the dreams. And then here we go, this is where we first enter the lab. So here on this side we've got the Dream Lab and this green colour kind of links into the entity Mentry and all the retro technology again. We can see here ideas of the dream kind of coming through in that brain scan, old technology. So this side regular, this side is irregular. I used a prism to kind of distort the photographs and create kind of a surreal experience. And here we are introduced to our first character, the experimenter. These images were inspired by Kyle Thompson, who is a visual artist who kind of does Photoshop surreal situations, which is exactly what I wanted to do with my experimenter. So the experimenter is actually inspired a lot by my Gothic research in English literature. It's very dark, monochrome, really showing the like villainous character of this experimenter. So here the experimenter is just being introduced, but also these images of the hands kind of play throughout the rest of the book. And here I've done some manipulation with the images, and the idea here is that the experimenter is playing with its identity and hiding itself from the subject, who is to be introduced next. So the experimenter acquires a subject. So here there is a constructed box that I made and then are some projections on it. Projections are always a great way to kind of develop your work, and they always worked out really well for me because I did a lot of photography, so they really helped add layers and combine my work. So here there are projections of kind of brain scans, kind of imagery to do with dreams, graphs, all that kind of stuff, and this is the experimenter acquiring a subject. So you might notice that they are both played by me, and it can get a bit confusing, but I'll try and explain who is who along the way. Then here is a load of photos from my childhood, and it's factors affecting the experiment, childhood memories. And then I use these images in some collaging techniques. This is very like what I think is kind of GCSE. I didn't really like this work in the long run, but you know, it got me some good marks, I think. I don't actually know. But yeah, this was inspired by Rebecca Hawkes. So then the subject enters the lab. So on this side it's reality, this side is the dream world, again represented by the marbling and the newspaper. And in this image she's just lying down, and then as she enters the lab and enters the dream, she is then floating. So here she is waking up within the dream lab. You know, she's confused, she's putting her hands out, kind of like what's going on. Here's me trying some drawing, not great, but it was something else, a little bit of digital drawing. And here again I'm using creative writing as kind of way of telling the story throughout the book. So in Dream 1, again, we've got a little storyline on top in acetate. I love using acetate to kind of just like add an extra element to my photographs. You know, doing photography in an art design A-level is kind of difficult because everyone around you is doing drawing, painting, and then you're stuck doing photographs, and sometimes I feel like it wasn't ever enough, and hence why I've got this quite in-depth storyline, because I really felt that comforted me and made me able to get marks in my A-level. So here we've got a nice open up page again, as well as doing like acetate here. I love doing kind of opening up pages, interesting things like that. So here is the experimenter's view of the dream. So she is still stuck inside this dream lab, but this is what she's experiencing. This is actually inspired by a dream of mine where I was like, I think I was semi-awake or semi-conscious, and I managed to kind of consciously make my hands longer. It was a very weird feeling, and I haven't really had it since, but this really inspired this dream that I have created. This is the idea of the hands coming in, and this dream that the experimenter has created is one where these hands were meant to have caught her, but she walks off nonetheless and she's free. So this is experiment number 1, and the experimenter has failed in capturing the subject. So here are some pictures. We're now back to the experimenter, and the experimenter is monitoring the images within the lab, and we've got some information here about dreams, kind of sleep stages. These are actually screenshots from my Fitbit, so it's actually how long I slept and things, which is really interesting. These are the things that the experimenter is using in the lab. So we've got a snippet of the lab in my book. So this is dream number 2, inspired by Chung's music video. A lot of music videos do really inspire me. This is my first time actually using it in my sketchbook. Usually I feel like this kind of photo shoot would be something I did for Instagram or something I just kind of experimented on for my portfolio, but I decided to put it in my book because I really liked it. So these were some more images, and then that was subsection A, and then this is subsection B. So we got the dream transfer. So you know when you're in a dream and you kind of move from one aspect of the dream to another and you don't really know how it happens? Well, this is representing that kind of feeling as we go from subsection A to subsection B. So in this, these were taken in Liverpool, and I kind of used the idea from the music video of like dolphins in the air, and I put a whale in the air, and it's just kind of like, what the hell is going on? And then here we're back to the lab and like the experimenter's view. So here is the subject Alpha, she's later known, just in the lab and kind of like experiencing the dream. So here it is, some long exposure photos, and I've put this plastic over it. This plastic was actually seen in the dream lab, so that's what is covering this box here. Here are some long exposure photos. She's screaming, she's trying to get out, and this is kind of what this plastic represents. Is she's realised she's in a dream but she can't get out. Then we move on to dream sequence ruptured, and this was the final piece for book 1. This was the entirety of year 12, and at the end of it I did an installation. I had a video playing. You can go and see that on my YouTube. It's not very good, but you know, it kind of tells the story. Here are some inspirations for the installation, and then here are some more photographs of the installation. So on the roof there was the box that represented the dream lab, and from that box I suspended some tapes and floppy disks, you know, all this retro technology that is seen all the way through my project. And it was a very interactive experiment. As you can see here, people are walking through it all the time. It was right in the corridor, so people were like constantly experiencing it. I really enjoyed kind of seeing people interact with my work like that. It was very inspiring to see. And then this is the end of book 1. So in book 2, Controlling the Reality, the experimenter has gone out into public trying to find new subjects, because at the end of Inside the Dream Lab the experimenter runs away. So in the video we can see she runs away, and this is where we're left. The experimenter has to go out into the real world and find new subjects to experiment on. And some more locations. Internal experiment, change and variation. So this is kind of where a lot of the imagery from this book stems from. I really enjoyed experimenting with different colours, Photoshop, kind of neon, all that, this kind of inversion idea in this book. You know, the experiment has gone from being heavily monochrome in book 1 to being a lot more than that in book 2. In fact, quite the opposite. So this book is based on the 5 elements of writing philosophy. The first one that we have gone with is wood, and this one was shot in the summer holidays in between year 12 and year 13. So this is my book that I did in year 13, but we were encouraged to start it earlier, in about April, I think. So this has got a storyline. It's kind of inspired by Little Red Riding Hood almost. She's going through the park, she's really happy, and then you can't really see in this photograph and through the video, but a hand comes out and she realises, she tries running away, but she gets strangled by it and she turns into a tree. So, you know, that happens. So this is the plan and this is the product. Here the experimenter has planned out what he wants to happen in general, and then this is actually what has ended up happening within the dream. Here we're back to the experimenter. In this book it's a lot clearer because when I'm visible it is the experimenter, so that's not confusing. But I'm just again playing around with Photoshop. I'm showing the progression. I think this is a good idea to get marks, is to show the progression of Photoshop or progression of editing that you've done. Here I did my first little bit of digital drawing. I really enjoy this style of drawing. I take the image, I invert it, put it in loads of different colours, and then I trace over it in this like scribbling motion to try and kind of create a kind of surreal outline, I guess. And there's another one, and then one more for the next dream, which is a dream of water. So here are the images for the water photo shoot. This dream was inspired by the dream of the model, a dream of drowning. this is kind of where I take my first steps into like more fashion-based photography. You know, I've got the rough, I've got a lot more editorial makeup, and it is something new, and I really enjoyed doing this photo shoot, and you can kind of see the influence of fashion photography from now on. And then again, with every photo shoot I've done, I've tried to manipulate it in some sort of way. So this was an artist response to actually a fan editor on Instagram. I just kind of did this overlaying, kind of more inversion, all this kind of stuff kind of ties together. Then we've got here some more responses to this fan artist and identity variation. So now the experimenter has gone from being me to being a completely different person, but the one identifying factor is this suit. This suit that goes all the way through. It is the costume of the character. And this is because the experimenter doesn't want to be exposed, you know, they want to hide, so that's what they're doing. And then here is a third element of fire. This wasn't my original plan for the photo shoot, but you know, sometimes you're on a time crunch. So this is what we came up with in that time. It was very windy, so we didn't get very many flames, but you know, you sometimes just got to go with what you've got. I found these photos to need a little bit of jazzing up, so my friend suggested to do some drawing, and I really like actually this scribbling effect. It kind of ties into earlier and kind of just makes the pages a little bit more interesting. I find that during photography, you know, you have a lot of images to stick on a page and it doesn't always look great. So things like this just help like tie it all together and make it a bit more interesting. Then here we are kind of getting a lot more creative. Dream mutation. So this was after I went on a trip with school to China, and whilst I was there I tried to take a lot of photos of the architecture, of all the patterns in the buildings, to try, you know, tie back in with the wuxing philosophy which, you know, powered this whole project. Location for China. The experimenter leaves the lab. So back in the beginning, the experimenter left the lab and tried to find new subjects. This is them doing that again, but this time in China, kind of linking back into the wuxing philosophy. And more dream synthesis. So all these images here, this is Shanghai, more Shanghai, and what the experimenter is doing. So this picture here is the experimenter, me. But this is the experimenter, and what they're doing is they are overlaying all these images, kind of putting them all together and creating new dreams for people to experience. Here we kind of take another neutral turn. So it's really difficult to make pages interesting. So for this one I printed out some lyrics from a song which I really liked on top of tracing paper, and again this says 5 elements. Earth. I've got the, can't really see, but I've got the lyrics translated over here. It's the dream launch from Wavy, and the lyrics read, "Swinging around the universe, I'm still learning to control. Launch your dreams into outer space, waiting for the dream launch to accelerate her closer to success." So this kind of links into the dream lab because, you know, the experimenter doesn't quite know what they're doing yet. So they're still experimenting, trying to control the subjects. And this is just another example of that. So here we've got earth and a little bit of wind as well in there. Taken the plastic from the original lab and, you know, used it as a prop. Here we see the kind of neutral tone photo shoot turn 360 in colour wise. You know, I've used a lot of neon colours, I've used layers again, I've used inversion, layering, Photoshop, everything. I wanted it to kind of get progressively worse and progressively more intense as the book went on. And I think I successfully did that. These are 3D note paper pads, and looking at this through 3D glasses is just so much fun. The colours are insane and it's quite a lot. I kind of wanted people to look at this and kind of be overwhelmed. I wanted people to look at it and go, oh my goodness, like, this is too much. The Dream Lab isn't meant to be a comfortable experience for anybody, and that includes the viewer. And here we're back to some really cold tones again. Here we are in Dream 5, The Dream of Metal. This is definitely my favourite one of the whole series. So this one is metal, as we can see from the very cold colour scheme. This is highly influenced by a lot of editorial photo shoots, and this is one of my favourite ones actually. It's included in my portfolio. If anybody wants a portfolio, university portfolio application tour, that is coming, probably. So in this photo shoot, we used silver paint to kind of make it look like her hand was turning into metal, and that was the purpose of the dream, was that she was going to turn into metal. And then here we have gone all out again with the colours, the layering, the different images, and this is the end of book 2 actually. I was a bit rushed at the end, towards the end of this book, because we are moving on to the exam book, which is coming up next. So I never managed to do a final piece for this either, as well, because of coronavirus. So I was planning on doing some sort of layering with these images, kind of making it a really surreal experience for people, but I didn't quite get there. So this is the end of book 2. So here is my 4th book. This is my exam book with the title Unbalanced Forms of Power. There are a number of titles to choose from, and I chose the Balanced Forms question. So we start the book with a relatively plain page of the experimenter in this new location. This new location is the simulation, and this is where this book was meant to carry on from. I didn't quite manage to finish this book as I had hoped, but you know, this was the starting point for it. In this photo shoot, I was inspired by Taemin's music videos, where he has a very strong, powerful character that he expresses through dance. And so I decided to do the same with kind of really experimental poses, a lot of movement, but at the same time as being quite elegant in my moves, I wanted to be strong. The experimenter is meant to be an antagonist, you know, they're not a good guy. So I was hoping to create a bit of maliciousness within this as well. These photographs and responses were taken on the 7th of March, 2020, I think. So, you know, this time it wasn't very particularly clear what we were doing with the rest of our A-level, so you can kind of tell that with the quality of my work. It wasn't the best, but, you know, I tried to do some responses from this and just did some more manipulation of colour and editing, layering on these pieces by printing onto tracing paper and then layering them on top of the original photograph. Then here I did another little edit. This is where I really started to kind of explore graphic design. So here we go, this says welcome to my simulation, and this is where we're going from now on. In the first book we had dream simulations, but this wasn't something new. This was a lot more than just a simple dream. So planning and preparation, so this was again, this experimenter came back to the lab and started planning the new dream sequence for the subjects. So this page definitely isn't a strong page. The photographs on it I do really like, and they are some of my most favourite work, but the page isn't particularly strong in its design or concept of the page, I guess. But the idea of these photographs is that the 4 characters are in the simulation, which was explored in the first photo shoot. They're in the simulation, they're all trapped here together. You know, these are the characters from book 2. They've come together in this new version of the Dream Lab, the simulation, which I called Eden. I really enjoyed this photo shoot because it's the first time I shot with like kind of more than 1 or 2 people. There's 4 of us and myself in some of the photographs, and we had like somebody on hand to help out, and I also did all the styling by myself, which I really enjoyed. I kind of wanted to give it like kind of a school vibe, and you know, they all wanted to be the same colour, so we had a lot of greys and checks and dark blue, light blue. You know, I really wanted all the styling to be cohesive. Here I kind of start to explore my religious inspirations for this photo shoot. So as you can tell from the title of Welcome to Eden, with this idea of unbalanced forms of power, the experimenter kind of acts as a god to these subjects. They don't really have much choice over what they're doing, they're controlled, and they're kept in line. So here again I was inspired by some fan artists to create some kind of edits with my friends' faces. This was me trying to pick up marks. I'm not sure if this actually got marked into my final mark, because this all happened very quickly towards the beginning of lockdown. Here again, inspired by a graphic design artist. These pages aren't fully done, they're not particularly finished. They've just got the basic work on there, so this is not my strongest sketchbook by any means, and I've forgotten a page. So I think this sketchbook is probably told best by its photographs and kind of the story that I'm telling to go along with it. So here is Subject Alpha. She has returned from her adventures running away from the Dream Lab, and she wants to come back. She's crying and asking for forgiveness. Forgive me, for I have sinned. This was taken in the beginning of lockdown, so these were never marked, but they're actually some of my favourite photographs from this project. She comes back to the Dream Lab and she's greeted with a nightmare. This is punishment for running away, and this all was taken in lockdown. So this is definitely mirroring the imagery from this last photo shoot. Again, the Subject Alpha and the experimenter who is shown here are 2 in the same person, so the imagery is very similar. Here what's happened is the Subject Alpha has realised what's going on with the Dream Lab and poisons the apple. Poisons the apple, gives it to the experimenter eats it, it's poisoned and dies. Basically, that's the storyline in a nutshell. Obviously I wanted to experiment a lot more with these photos and a lot more with this storyline. As lockdown came, I felt like I really needed to close off this project just for a sense of peace of mind. this character and this storyline has been coming with me for 2 years of my life, and the fact that I had to end it all of a sudden was quite difficult. So I carried on a little bit, but it never fully came to a peak. And that's it. There the experimenter dies and the experiment fades away with them. So I hope this gave anybody who is out there doing GCSE or art A-level some ideas and some kind of reassurance. Whatever you're doing fine. I feel like the most important thing in art is doing what you love, because there's countless times I've seen people doing things that the teachers force them to do. I feel like sometimes that isn't the right way. With my work, I really did kind of ignore some norms of, you know, you have to do loads of drawing, you have to do loads of painting. Like, I didn't do any of that, and I still managed to get an A star. I didn't say that at the beginning, but I did actually get an A star for this work. That is teacher grades and teacher assessment, so take that with a grain of salt, but I did get an A star for it. And I'm going on to do photography at university. So that just shows it is possible doing whatever you want to do to get the grades you need. Obviously there is some kind of jumping through hoops to be able to get all the marks, but as long as you follow the mark scheme and follow your heart as well, I'm sure it'll turn out fine. If anybody has any questions, leave them down below in the comments or DM me at dai.syy or Wave Portfolio as well. So thank you very much for watching my sketchbook tour. I hope you find it interesting. Anybody who follows my Instagram at Wave Portfolio, I hope this kind of makes a little bit more sense, because I realised for 2 years I've been posting about this, I've been telling people snippets but never the whole story. So I hope you find this interesting, and I hope to see you in another video.